100 years ago, the 19th Amendment was passed, granting women the right to vote. Since then, multiple achievements and advancements have been made to shrink the gender gap. Today, one of the glaring issues amongst groups is the fact that men are paid more than women. It is true that men, on average, are paid more than women for doing the same job. Just to be clear, I am not against equal gender pay. I believe that two employees within the same organization with similar production and experience deserve a similar paycheck. And this has nothing to do with race, gender, or religion. But it must be noted that there is a difference between an organization and a field. An organization is a company, such as Devon Energy, and a field is what that company represents. Devon Energy is in the oil and natural gas industry, but is not affiliated with Chesapeake Energy. If two employees within Devon were to compare paychecks and see a difference due to their gender, they would have a valid complaint. But that same complaint would not exist if an employee from Devon compared his or her check to an employee from Chesapeake. This is important when referring to male and female athletes. There is a large number of people who believe that female athletes should be paid the same amount of money as male athletes. Their main reason for believing this is equal work. And while I do agree that female athletes do put in equal work, this is simply not possible. There is a little thing called money, and to say that female athletes deserve the same amount of money is to ignore the fact that it exists. Today, I will explain to you how money works, how employees earn their money, and why giving female athletes equal pay could be detrimental to the organizations that they represent. In an article by the Money Advice Service, the four main ways that employees earn their money is explained. 3 of these applies to athletes. They are salary, the amount of money an employee makes per year, usually based on working a required amount of hours per week. This applies to athletes because athletes compete in games, and they are paid justly for each game they compete in. The last 2 go hand in hand, and they are piecework. The more units an employee produces, the more they get paid, and commission. You receive a share of the sales you make. These apply to athletes due to their marketability. Athletes bring in fans, produce jersey sales, and bring in endorsements for their teams. A quick Google search brought up a poll that said 54% of all voters believed that female athletes should be paid the same amount as male athletes. I found this on debate.org, and most of the voters saying that they did deserve the same amount cited equal work as the main reason. In my opinion, this is a fancy way of saying that it's not fair. Unfortunately, life is not fair. Plenty of jobs have similar working hours to other jobs, but don't get paid the same because of location and profitability. Supporters of equal pay seem to have forgotten this simple fact, or just ignore it entirely. There is a stark difference between 2 employees getting paid different amounts of money due to their gender, and 2 employees being paid different amounts of money because their boss cannot give it to them. When looking at an athlete's contract, it must be noted that the time they spend on the job is not the only thing that is taken into account. In fact, one of their main sources of revenue is their marketability. LeBron James is a fantastic athlete, but if he was not so popular and did not sell so many jerseys and bring in so many fans to every building he goes to, his contract might be half of what it is today. He's great, and so is plenty of other athletes on plenty of other teams, but they are not just paid to win a couple extra games. They are paid for the money that they bring the organization, and that organization pays them for that. Unfortunately, female athletes are not as marketable. They are not on as many commercials, they don't catch as many people's attention, and the sports themselves aren't as popular. There are more than twice as many NBA teams than WNBA teams, and these teams draw in more than 10 times as many fans per game, with more games in a season. That's only the people there, not the people watching on TV, where every NBA game is on and half of the NBA or the WNBA games are on. This is not true for every sport, however. Women in tennis have equal pay opportunities as men. In fact, when looking at the top 10 paid tennis players in the world, 4 of them are women. This is in the same category as Roger Federer, Rafael Novak, and Novak Djokovic. Serena Williams, widely regarded as the best female tennis player of all time, made $8 million in salary or winnings in 2018. When compared to Roger Federer, he made $12.2 million in the same amount of time. It is important to note that Serena Williams did not compete in the Australian Open due to the birth of her child. Had she competed in this, I'm sure the numbers would have been much, much closer. When you view Roger Federer's overall earnings, they are 3 times more than Serena Williams, but it must be noted that they are also twice as much as the next best person. Roger Federer is simply one of the most popular and profitable athletes in the world. While tennis has been able to combine their organizations in the same US Open, Australian Open, and every other competition, it is unrealistic to think that other sports could. Remember that in tennis, men and women compete in the same tournaments under the same organizations. This means that the bosses are paying the employees the same amount of money for their work, under the same organization. But this is not true for almost any other sport. It is good in theory to think that women should be paid as much as men, and most people should agree with that. But to do so would be detrimental to athletes in a few years and completely destroy the organizations in several. It is not sexist to believe that men should be paid more if you are only believing that due to the fact that it is impossible. The market is simply not there at this time for female athletes to catch up. It doesn't have to be this way forever. Fans of female sports could band together. They could advertise more. They could spend more money on their teams and help the league to expand. The NBA, MLB, and NFL were once small leagues who people paid 50 cents to watch a game. They expanded into multi-billion-dollar organizations due to fans believing in their teams and wanting to give them money, going to the games, and advertising. Fans of women's sports could do this. It is unlikely, but possible. The ball is in your court. I'd like to thank Forbes for providing all of these statistics on athletes' contracts and salaries per year, and I'd like to thank you all for listening. How long was that?